Okay, good day, everyone. So today I want to start about Helsinki in 1900 to 2000. And this is a time period in Finnish history that was most stuff happened, if you think in a historic perspective. We had lots of good things happening in Helsinki, but also lots of disasters. So we had World War I, World War II, and the Civil War in Finland. And those parts I'm not going to talk about today. So today is just a soft start for you guys to get to know what's being done in Helsinki. And then in the weekends to come, we will go more into details. So I have been thinking to have these about 8 sections. We will see now how long it will, but this is like the section 1 of this Helsinki 1900 to 2000. And it goes under the title Finlandia Lectures, because I think Helsinki is a good model for the rest of Finland in order to see how stuff were shaped in Finland, so that the rest of Finland also will get to know that if you want to build something that is sustainable, you have to build it on reality and on the truth. That unfortunately many things in Turku are today being built on the wrong way. When it's good that Finland now belongs to European Union, but it's also the drawback is that when Finland gets help from European Union, many of these people who are helping Finland don't know the truth. They believe everything that people tell them here from Finland. So many things in Finland have been based on lies and on dirty plays, and this is not going to be sustainable. We will not have an independent country called Finland that our ancestors fought for, and many died, like in World War II, or this old generation, like my grandma's generation, many of them died for us to have an independent country. And if we play dirty tricks that many people are playing around in universities in Finland, we will lose Finland. Finland will not be independent. So one of my goals and aims with these Finlandia lectures and Helsinki lectures is to show the rest of Finland what has been done right in order to follow those good stuff and avoid the bad stuff. Because what I have seen in Turku, I have seen 3 generations in Turku that have done the same bad decisions and the same mistakes from the previous generation, and it's a tragic. I will take Turku as a tragic and disaster example of how Finland has been, and I will try to make sure that the good part of Finland is getting the good stuff from Helsinki. So this is just a soft start, just to give you a picture. So we, in my lecture from yesterday, I said, okay, Helsinki started to become from a village into a city. And now we are in the phase that people are moving from countryside inside the city. And since people from the countryside mostly spoke Finnish language is becoming more and more dominant in Helsinki. So nowadays the Swedish speakers are a small minority, but we should know that University of Helsinki offers basic education both in Swedish and Finnish, and it has the only totally medical education in Swedish in the country. And this is important to know because you want to provide service to the population in their own mother tongue, and this is what Helsinki University does. But I would like to tell you guys that although the education is in Swedish, many of the books that were used, like anatomy books in the 80s, I know from personal experience that they were chosen in from Germany. So they were written in German. Of course, it was Latin and German, but many people who studied medicine in Helsinki in the Swedish-speaking programs, they were using this anatomy books from Germany. So they knew this stuff both in Latin and German, and then of course also Swedish. So the teaching is done in Swedish, but the books can be like in Swedish or German or English. Now dominantly mostly English, but depends on what generation you were when you studied medicine. And of course, all this education, it was dominantly men, but then gradually become like more and more women. So nowadays we have the same amount of women and men, slightly more women than men that graduate from universities in Finland. And now we have, of course, also all other languages involved. So you can choose many language during your basic school years if you just want to. So just to give you the good picture of Helsinki is that the construction is blooming and the city is changing rapidly. And like when they started to build, houses were dominantly from wooden houses, but then when they made Helsinki the capital, they started also to build lots of houses in stones, and they were not just one level; they were like up to five-story buildings. So they also built on heights. And since like Helsinki in the beginning was very much like a village, so there were lots of animals, but the amount of animals has been, less and less. So nowadays you don't, in central Helsinki, you don't have farms with animals. It's totally city dominant, but it was not like this in the beginning of 19th century. And I have given you to the link to this stuff. Lots of this can be found on the internet with very good sources. So it's just to look for details if you want to. Okay. So schools were not, in 100 years, they have really developed a lot. So in the beginning of the 19th century, it was mostly like only 6 years, and most children left school after 4 years. So in the beginning of 19th century, many children just had 4 years of schools. And in the beginning of 19th century, they paid a bit, and they could be also for free if you could not afford it yourself. But then they had private schools, and these private schools, like for boys and girls, you could find private schools like in Helsinki, of course, but also in other towns. And many of these were active until the 80s. Of course, the amount was less and less. I guess in the 50s and 60s, you had the most amount of private schools, but then they just got less and less. But it was good schools. It was not just, that they said, okay, private, and you paid, and it was just, a paper that you got, you really got good education. So many of the books of the students of these private schools are still very usable, although they were written like 60, 70 years ago. So they are very usable even today because it's basic knowledge, and basic knowledge is always good. And they were written pedagogical and very good. So and the language is easy to understand. So I recommend it if you want to have basic knowledge about Helsinki and Finland. So you read books that were written like 60, 70 years ago, you will get very good knowledge. So we have this one huge happening in 1900. So it's in 6th of December, 1917. And that is the day when Finland finally became independent, or they did the Declaration of Independence. But it was not like it went over one night and stuff like that. We have, during the history, if you go back to the 17th century, so as England for some reason always wants to have some kind of opinion about Finland. So the British had already given the suggestion that Finland should become independent in the 17th. So as I say, opinions and ideas are as many as there are people around. So you cannot say one idea is better than the other idea. All ideas are good in themselves. But what we need is the ability to communicate. So unfortunately, what I have seen, like the bad things, and especially in Turku, it's like this, it's like dictatorship in the worst shape possible. And you could never think that all these beautiful words about democracy and equality in Finland, it's like it's not written for people who live and work in Turku. It's written somewhere in the cyberspace for cyber people or something like that. So my goal and my aim with this lecture is to give a vision of what is real and sustainable and what can be beautiful. So, and these are the very simple words. So everyone from Finland knows these words. So we said, Swedes, we are no more. Russians, we cannot become. Therefore, Finns, we must be. So the whole debate now, the whole country of Finland is still a work in progress. It's a project in progress in order to shape and define Finns we must be. So the population of Finland is a bit over 5 million. So I could say that if you ask people around in Finland, we have, we say we have roughly 5 million. So if you will get roughly 5 million different ideas about what Finns we must be is defined to be. So for people from outside, they think we have like a common language in Finland or common languages in Finland. It's Swedish and Finnish and common culture. But the truth is that the definition of being a Finn has 5 million different ideas and opinion behind it, dependent on who you ask and who you talk with. And this is like it's like a coin. You flip the coin. It's a two side of the story. It's a very weakness because then it's a reality and fantasy. Maybe you cannot differ, but the strength of it gives you a richness because it gives you 5 million ideas of what the country Finland should be looking like. So this makes that people in Finland are very active, because every human being in Finland has one picture and one vision for what Finland is. We all love Finland. We are very patriotic. We all love Finland. We all want to create something. But we have 5 million different ideas about what is to be a Finn and what is to be a country. And some of these ideas are sustainable and some of these ideas are not sustainable. But then we have also this good tradition in Finland. It's called talko. It means we work for free. So every time when it's like crisis so deep that you think this country is going to die, then there is someone who sees the light somewhere and does talko. It says work for free. So my grandfather, he had a very good skills in working with wood. So he could build things in wood. He could build ships, he could build houses and so on. And he helped my grandmother's relatives building houses for free. So they just built the house. And then when it was ready, then they celebrated and had some good food and music and danced and so on. But it was like an effort, a group effort done on free, so people could build houses. And there were good houses. They're still, I mean, they were built like, I don't know, a long time ago, like 70 years ago, but they're still around and they have been changing owners and everybody is happy with it. So that was like my grandfather's contribution to being a Finn, but he could not speak Finnish at all. He only spoke Swedish. So he had problems with customer who spoke Finnish. So, and it was like misused by those customers who deliberately knew that my grandfather did not speak Finnish and so on. So there, as I said, it's 5 million different opinions about what is being Finnish and what is not being Finnish, but the common thing that everybody has the love for Finland, but then we have 5 million different ideas on how things should be built up. And since we are such a geographically huge country, there is space for 5 million ideas because we have space for things to be built up. So as long as our stupid ideas does not kill ourselves, then we will survive. And we could say that it's more or less, compared to many other countries, I would not say heaven on earth, but it's like a sort of country, a sort of home, a sort of being human being, a sort of being a species that has brain activity. So it will be very exciting to see how the next 10 years are going to be shaped, because we are in new situations and we have lots of things, unfortunately, that we have done in Finland that in the past 10 to 20 years, they have been totally wrong. So many of the things that are now, they are going to, it's like you're going to build a house. If the first level is built wrong, then the 5th level will, just collapse. So many of the things they have done, it will collapse because the ground floor is built the wrong way. It's built on lies. And everything that is built on lies is not going to be sustainable. But as I said, there is always someone who sees the light and saves something somewhere. So it will be very exciting to see the next 10 years in Finland. So I'm just going to refer to one bad stuff, and then the rest of the bad stuff we will take during the next weekends. But we had the Spanish flu And of course, Helsinki was like most affected because since it was a huge town. So, and I only have now a link in Swedish. I did not find good links in English or Finnish. So this one is in Swedish. And this is like, you should always think this is like a bit more like, it's not the working class for people that are here giving their opinions. So as I said, people were affected different ways. But this is how these people, there are two academic people talking about how they were affected during this time. And as usual, it was like, when it comes to family and children, so the mother is the one that is mostly concerned, and father should be like this calm man who just, observes and keeps all the sorrows and things to himself. So this was like, because as a child I was mostly in contact with my grandmother, so I got to know how my grandfather was. So when my grandmother gave birth to my grandfather, so he was like this calm man, that he was not at all involved. So my grandmother had to take herself the bus to the hospital where she gave birth to the child, and then came home, and then the father saw the children. I mean, it took a long time for Finland to come where we are today, and we are still, when it comes to taking care of children, we are less developed than Sweden. Then Sweden is aiming to have 50-50, but that is not. But in Sweden, it's in Finland, it's still the mother takes, when the children are young, up to 3 years old. In many families, the father does not at all take any extra vacation from work, so it's the mother that takes care. And then we have in many families in Finland still that if you give birth to 5 or 6 children, because you're allowed to stay at home with your children, so you never work. You are like, every 3 years you give a birth to a child, so you're more or less working at home with your children and so on. But that possibility is available. You can, if you want to care for children, I mean, the child care is possible if you want to. And also in the beginning of the 19th century, it was not at all unusual that you had up to 8 children. So my grandfather, so he came from a big family. There were like 8 or 9 children. One of them, usually this was like exceptional, only one child died. But in Helsinki, because that it was so close, the houses so close to each other, so we had lots of children that got in contact with each other when they got sick and died and so on. So it really is an enormous development in 100 years, and it would be really amazing to know if someone is born in the beginning of the 19th century, and then were placed 100 years forward. I mean, how do they what's their perspective of life, and what do they think life is, and so on? Have the values changed so much or not? It would be interesting to know if they want to. But there are good stuff. So most people know each other many generations back, maybe. I mean, usually in history you say 3 generations, but in Finland, because there are so many nodes left and so on, you can even go back 6 generations. even if you don't have it yourself, so someone has somewhere saved something, so you can find still stuff written from 17th and 16th century. So maybe you can go back 8th generation even and see. And it's not, I mean, the Swedish language is not so difficult. So when it was written like 300-400 years ago, so the dialects that are alive today, they are actually the form of Swedish that was spoken like 300 years ago and so on. So I mean, you have no difficulties in understanding written old Swedish. It's very easy to understand, at least in Finland, when you know dialects. In Sweden, so maybe the new generation has some problems because many young Swedes lack the knowledge of dialects. Okay, so as I said, I like these videos, so I'm just going to show you some videos more, because all these stuff that I spoke is just one thing. But if you want to visualize yourself, it's good with pictures, and these are some pictures put together to be videos. Okay, so you saw from these pictures that Helsinki, it's surrounded by water. So there are some small islands connected to each other. So it's still like this, that when they say that the Swedish language is minority, but there are some parts of Helsinki, like uh, um, quarters of area where you live, like the dominant language is Swedish. You hear just Swedish in the neighborhood. So also it's the same in the villages and countryside. So where my grandmother lived, so we had just one Finnish speaking family. The whole village was like Swedish speaking, but the town nearby has Finnish as a dominant language. So it's like that is what I'm saying. Statistic can also lie to you if you're not local, you don't understand. They give you a number and they say that the percentage of Swedish speaker is like, I don't know, 2%. But it's the average. If you take an area, a big area, the whole area of Helsinki maybe, and then you say like, okay, it's 4%. But in a certain part of Helsinki, in a certain neighborhood, you could have like a Swedish spoken by 70% because they are gathering together. It's also like nowadays you have all these immigrants that come to Finland and Sweden, in Sweden for a long time, and it's usually they come and then, or in Germany that you there are like areas in Germany that you only hear Turkish. You are in Germany, but you don't hear German language. They are migrants from Turkey and so on. So it's a bit wrong statistically when they are saying the need of Swedish. I mean, if you are in a neighborhood that you have Swedish as a mother tongue, and it's not just that the language is Swedish, it's also the whole, I mean, the whole society was built on these the roots. I mean, because if you want to have something that is sustainable, you need roots. A tree is growing, but it has a root. If you ignore the root, the tree will fall. So the debates, many of the lies that they tell you in Finland, they think they can build huge trees in Finland, and they think they can ignore the roots that were Swedish speaking, because in Finland it was not just that, as I said, we did not just have First and Second World War, we also had Civil War. And in Civil War, many people changed their name from Swedish, made it Finnish, and they also changed their home language because it was so tragic. Civil war. I mean, siblings, sister was against brother, brother was against sister, father was against children, children were against fathers. It was like very, very bad fight, and mostly based on the language and the priorities that the language gave and so on. So, as I said, we have survived because 5 million in a huge geology area, it can survive because we always find a solution. But it's not this beautiful picture that our politicians want to give outside, the ugly truth they want to hide. And nothing is sustainable if you want to paint a beautiful picture when the inside is very ugly. So, and then we have the next video and more pictures. So I can talk on this because it's no voice at all on this. So as you can see, so you can see the water. The water has always been there. It has always connected people. And you can see that the buildings are huge. And considering that at this time of point, there were around 100,000 people. So the buildings were much more huger than the population itself. And then it was the transportation by boats was very, very common. So not just Helsinki, so the whole archipelago. So it was the boats. And people had basic knowledge because, I mean, the access to doctors and teachers and so on. So it wasn't because you did not have these communications. And so you had to have basic knowledge. So people really educated themselves. If they did not have the right knowledge, they did educate themselves. And then some stuff are always there in nature. Like you see these seabirds, they have been around for 100 years. They have always been there. You saw them 100 years ago, you will see them now today also exactly at the same place. So nature does not really change so much if humans don't interfere so much. And Finland is very good when it comes to make boats. I mean, many of these boats are still around and can be used because they were built so good and also maintained good. And fish, as you can see. So fish is one of the main food, and like many people who have summer cottage during summers. So if you get your own fish and you have your own potatoes, so the food is free if you eat that food. If you during summers just eat potato and fish. So in the old times, you really did not maybe can afford anything, so you could get like that. But then nowadays it's like I don't know, it's a fun thing to do, to be able to get your own food without needing to buy it. And this is a common thing, the love for nature. So I still have not met someone in Finland who says they don't like nature. They might not everybody likes to swim because they think the water is too cold. That you can have a common discussion about, but other from that, so people usually like nature. And you can see, I mean, if you think the clothes, so it's the clothes that were in the whole Europe everywhere. Yeah, and hat, it was like very important to have hat. So I remember from my grandmother, it was always she had different hats or a scarf or something, but it was very important to have something on one's head. Now we can see some people don't have anything on their head, but as I said, opinions and ideas are 5 million in Finland. You have what you want. Yeah, and you can see that they eat ice cream. So ice cream seems always have been popular. And then berries. It's very common that you pick berries in Finland. So you can do that also if you want to. You pick berries and you make your stuff with it, bake or make a soup or whatever you want. And people also earn. I mean, you can earn money if you want to, if you are good in picking mushrooms and berries and so on, and then you sell it to other people. So that is also one thing. And as you can see, streets back then, it was like there's still that area still in Helsinki. It's stone on the streets. And then we have the tram. So Helsinki has tram. For some reason, Turku is like dying because they don't have tram here. So the big politician debate in Turku is that we want with forced to get tram to Turku. And the streets in Turku are not wide the way there are in Helsinki. So the traffic jam in Turku has been a discussion for as long as I remember, and also the older generation, because I remember when I was a child, like 8, 9. So these older relatives that were studying in Turku, they always said, the traffic jam is very bad in Turku. So some problems seem to never get solved. They just are inherited from generation to generation. There you can see coffee shops, nice coffee shops. We really love coffee shops in Finland. So if you want to socialize in Finland, it's always good to get a cup of coffee. And we had some cars and so on, but private cars were not so common in Finland. They were like maybe more in the 60s started, but also many generations already in the 60s, they were thinking about the environment. So they preferred to take bus instead of having private cars. And music has always been a big part of school systems. So we always have school. I mean, the basic school always has a piano, and I mean, it's part of the knowledge of teacher. And this is the train station in Helsinki that I told you, 1862 it was founded then, built then, started to be used 1862. So all those stones from 1862 are still there. It's the same building, and it's very wide streets, really wide streets compared to other cities. Yeah, so the ship and captains and so on, they have played a big role in the history, because you transport people and also goods and stuff and so on. And it's very well organized. I mean, I have never seen any panic and stress on boats. It's like a natural part of life. You know how to get into it. Okay, and then of course we are like, this is like sort of spa in the 19th century, yeah, and they do some kind of gymnastics and so on. But the swimming, as I said, so this is it was not a common thing. Like I know my grandmother, she was totally, she did not want to swim at all. So the generation that was born in the 20s, it was not so common for them to do the swimming. So this is like big town Helsinki, so they do all these stuff. And sailing boats. So most boats, it was like sailing. Sailing is the big thing in Finland. But then, of course, we have also the machine thing, motors and so on. And playing games. It was very common to play games, especially upper class. So playing cards. Yeah, this is like a common board game. We have board games in Finland. Yeah, so the water and the ocean, that stuff, it has been around. So maybe that is also one of the sustainable things. The nature is a sustainable part of Finland. It's been there for centuries. So what matter humans can come up with, it's the nature that is going to be dominant. And you can really see you have the love for the books, you maintain them, you're very systematically, it's like some kind of order, it's not chaos and so on. And this film was provided by the museum, Authority of Museums. I believe this was my last slide, but let's see if I have one more. No, it was the last slide. Okay. So just also to go back to the first slide, like saying, so I just wanted to say, because the streets, they were in the 18th century when they started to do the streets, the city was going to be shaped, and new streets were seeing the light in the city of Helsinki. When they wanted to name it, because in 18th century, Finland still belonged to Russia. They took many names from the Russian royal family. So we have Alexander Street after Tsar Alexander and Nikolai and so on. And they also used names from Russian saint like George. So, and the streets, they were written in 3 languages. The name of the streets, they were written in Finnish, Swedish, and Russian. And this was until 1917, when Finland became independent. And it's still like this. I mean, the town, when you visit a town in Finland or a village or whatever, so when you see the name, I mean, you can understand what is the dominant language in that area, because if the dominant language is Swedish, then the sign is first written in Swedish and then it's written in Finnish. And if it's the other way around, if Finnish dominates, then you have Finnish first and then Swedish. So this is a good detail to know, just by knowing these details, you don't need to ask around if you're like in a small village somewhere that you don't know, what is the language of these people. If you just look at the street's name, it gives you some kind of indication what they speak in this town or village or this neighborhood. So once again, I want to compliment Helsinki because of those stone houses that were built in the 18th century. Many of them are still around being used and they are very usable. I'm not sure why many of the stone houses in Turku were removed. I have to do more research about that. But one of the biggest drawbacks in Turku is that at least the stone house, the tree houses that are left in Turku are mostly very nice, but the stone houses is very strange. Many have been removed, and the train station in Turku was very beautiful, made in stone that they removed, and they have replaced with a very ugly building now, and so on. So it's good to know what is good and what is not good, and what is sustainable and what is not sustainable, and then hopefully we will also come up with a system when they make these decisions. I don't know, because it's very, I always think of the future, and in my opinion, since I have seen the mistakes and bad decisions that are done by authorities and politicians is like 90% of the decisions seem to be bad and 10% good. So I think we have to change that. We have to come up with a system that 90% of the decisions are good. And for that, I think we have to rethink, because do we really need all these politicians and authorities that are making all these bad decisions? Can we do something else that, whatever has to be decided, because nowadays we have this digital forum. So let's say they want to build something new so that every citizen can give its opinion, instead of having all these well-paid politicians that seem 9 out of 10 times do wrong and bad decisions. So if you really want to have democracy, so maybe we should create a system, and we have to teach our schools. We have to start in schools that every decision, everybody votes, from beginning. So if you have this in your head, that every new thing that wants to be built, or every new development that is suggested, you vote, then you don't need presidents, you don't need kings, you don't need politicians, because humans are pure humans, and then you can also redirect. So instead of paying all these salaries to all these politicians, so because as a citizen you're voting, so every time you vote you should also be I don't know, either paid by money or something else. Because you are part of the society, then you should get something because you are participating in the decision. Then you should either be paid for it or be getting stuff for it or something like that. So I think the future, if you want to have democracy, it means that you have to get rid of all authorities and all the presidents, politicians, all that. And because every country belongs to the citizens of that country, so every citizen should be part of every decision that is made. And for that, you divide all these politicians' salaries that you have, you divide it on all the citizens, so they are always there and do this. So I think we have a bright future in front of us. The digital technology is going to help us a lot to spread around ideas and get rid of fake news and have real news. and also have the discussion, because many people might not know what they are saying is wrong. So it's good to have a discussion about it, that your conclusion is not maybe scientifically correct, or not based on correct experience, or not based on statistical and correct data and so on. So I find the future to be bright in the case that people seem to be able to communicate, because I have young relatives that are just 4 and 5 years old, and they are attending preschool here in Finland. And it's amazing their ability to talk and discuss. Of course, they're children, but the way they talk, the way they express ideas and opinions is totally amazing. I have, when I was like in high school, and I was in contact with children that were age 4 and 5 years old, none of them had the ability to discuss things the way that preschoolers now are discussing things in Finland. So I do see the future to be bright, but we need also to make aware, because unfortunately, when these young children are in their 20s, they end up paying for many mistakes that were done by the generations before them. So in order to avoid them to need to struggle with the previous generations' mistakes, we need to have open discussions, and that is why I like the neurosciences, because it's the name for it is plasticity. Plasticity is the ability of the brain to adopt itself, to change. So if we can adopt to the change that every human being has a brain and its own idea, and when you are 20, you should be able to live by your own ideas and not by ideas of previous generation, then I think we will finally have this so-called heaven on earth in Finland and around the world. Thank you for listening. It will be nice to see you guys around during the months to come. Have a nice day.